Hi, I'm Brenda Schertz, and I am from the University of South Maine. My presentation today is focused on the experience of community service learning. Many people refer to it as CSL. Other people may know it as community-based learning, CBL, and either is applicable, same thing. So I'm going to discuss why it is important for students. First, community service learning. I'm going to talk about how it impacts students and the organizations they're involved in. First, I'm going to focus on how it benefits students. First, it builds comfortability and confidence. Confidence in their sign skill. Students feel like they've increased their exposure to sign language. And, originally, at the beginning of their progress, students feel a little wavered and unsure of themselves, a little scared even, and then to become involved in service learning, they become more confident in their skill. They also begin to see deaf people as equal, and they feel connected with the deaf community, and there's not this awkward balance of power going on, which is great. There's fantastic network opportunities, and often you can ask a deaf person to be a reference, which is great. And really, it's fun. It's like giving back, which is great. Now, let's talk about how it benefits the organization. Sometimes organizations need like temporary staff or volunteers for one day event, and this can help fill those gaps. Also, the organization gets exposure to students who might one day in the future become their interpreters. Additionally, the deaf community becomes kind of involved in the training of their future interpreters, and then the deaf people don't always get to be involved in the classroom, and the students get exposure that is not in the classroom too. Moreover, the deaf community gets to see who they might hire as their future interpreter and who they see as possible and qualified candidates to in the future become their interpreter after they graduate. Because of course after you graduate there's like this awkward transition period where you still need a little bit more experience and exposure to really get your skill ready to be an interpreter. Well, volunteer opportunities like this can make that transition a little bit smoother. Another benefit for students, and research proves this, that by getting involved in the community and learning that way, that your grades improve. In comparison, especially to students who are not so involved. Students involved in community service learning really start to get a grasp on what their personal values are too. So when you're learning, you start to understand what's important to the deaf community and how that influences your own values, which is a great benefit. Sometimes in the classroom there are gaps that need to be filled in learning, which really you can only grasp from being outside in the community, which this takes care of too. And some programs don't have opportunities like this. So the reason that I've set this up is, first, meeting possible ASL mentors. Really giving that whole immersion experience. And you get to really find out if the interpreting profession is a good fit for you. Maybe after this experience you get exposed and you feel like it's not a good fit, and that's fine. Also, you might think that your skills are something that they're not, and ultimately your ego gets a really big reality check with getting exposure to the community, which is great. It's a great It's a great improvement to receptive skills with sign language. And it's a great transition to practicum, which you are actually then doing real-life practice interpreting. And that last semester in practicum, you're not just thrown into it. You have this program that can condition you to be ready for practicum out in the community. And of course, your ASL skills are going to become better and evolve in places that they might be currently lacking. Some programs that have community service learning have a more structured approach, and some have some not so structured approaches where they just kind of throw people out there and write down their hours. And I'm going to give you both sides of that fence. So no structure really has there's really no constant communication. You just kind of document your hours and there's no one to really follow up with. But structure has that coordination between the site and the student. There's this mutual discussion and agreement with what the student has accomplished, how they're documenting their hours. The communication is effective, which is really important. It really lets you capitalize on the overall experience. And with that coordination, the site can allow the teacher to become really aware as to what the student's really doing and accomplishing. A non-structure approach, maybe you have that student that's really, really proactive and eager, and that's great, but sometimes you have students that are a little bit shy, and they would benefit, of course, from a more structured approach. Documenting your hours is really nice because students can actually see something tangible that proves your involvement and that proves your progress. And it's good for programs too because they get to see, oh wow, this student did 300 hours. And that student then of course feels really good and proud of themselves for all their hard work. And of course on a more structured approach, students would have a reflection paper which really lets them think about all that they had done, all they had learned. There's a lot of positives on the structured side. But not structured has a little bit more limitations. So the program requirements, we start off with ASL 3. There's not really any interpreting whatsoever, and there's 5 hours involved in that. And then it goes to 15 hours, and then 20 hours, and just keeps increasing as your ASL courses progress. And definitely we encourage variety. And the third year, after you've already built up some experience and some networking opportunities, you have your resume ready, that foundation has been set for you to become an interpreter. My program, which is not yet completely established for CSL, I get contacts all the time like, hey, we need some students, we need some little baby interpreters, send them our way. And that communication line opens up, which is great. But there's many different situations there's many different legalities that can prevent just sending random student interpreters off to places. So it really is a lot of work. We try to send student interpreters rather to fun and beneficial, but also safe environments where they can practice and improve their skill. Of course, feedback from the deaf community is very important for student improvement, and they're very lucky to have that kind of experience. Overall, it really aids in the transition process of learning to being ready to practice to being a true professional interpreter. CSL requirements, so there's the 1 credit hour courses. Where you just kind of you build that foundation and you document what you've done, document your hours. There's, of course, the recruitment of an ASL mentor, which can be a pretty lengthy process. But the good news is we have a lot of people that are calling and are really happy and appreciative to be involved in the progression and the development of students. When there's volunteer interpreting services that are needed, this is a great opportunity to fill those. And you need volunteer opportunities for many different deaf events, and every year there's always something. And it's great because the students get to document their hours. Sometimes there's movies and different events. There's a host of different opportunities where students are requested to involve and they can get great practice. There's the main Deaf Film Museum, there's the Deaf Culture Museum, Eastern Schools of Deaf Associate Soccer and Basketball Tournaments. Other places that we might send volunteers is Spindleworks, which is an arts and crafts establishment, and that's when we take into account where students live and see if that schedule and that kind of travel would be a good fit for them. And most students are very eager and excited about that opportunity. Some students are actually parents in real life, and that of course means that their opportunities are a little bit more of a challenge and sometimes things don't work out, but they definitely want to take the best opportunities possible, and this is one of them. Portland High School has deaf students, and sometimes our students can be kind of mentor and tutors for them, which is a great opportunity, and kind of immersing those two is really beneficial for all involved. There's been this mutual agreement developed, and every year we just keep adding to it over and over again. And recently there was the elementary schools in our area were contacting us in hopes that we could get involved and start teaching ASL to their students. And our students are like, well, I don't have any idea how to teach, but it's a great challenge, and it really increases your skill, and after a while you become more comfortable with it.